Good morning and welcome to the daily Bible reading for January 30th. Today is Sunday, the Lord's Day, and we are going to get it started with some reading from the prophets and also from the Gospel of Luke. Appreciate you tuning in today. We're going to be reading Isaiah chapter 30 and also Luke chapter 12. Again, thanks for being here, and I hope that this will set you up for a great day worshiping God with the saints wherever it is you might be, and especially to those who I'll be joining in just a little while in Loudon. Let's read together in Isaiah chapter 30. Isaiah 30, reading from the CSB. This is a condemnation, as the subheading says, of the Egyptian alliance. Again, these chapters 29, 30, and 31, they should be read in the context and through the lenses of what is happening historically, where Assyria is taking is advancing its causes and trying to overtake a bunch of territory and a bunch of land. They have done so already in the northern kingdom of Israel. And we think about what we read earlier in the book of Isaiah, that Ahaz was wanting to team up with Egypt, but here is Isaiah writing that teaming up with Egypt isn't going to do anything for you at all. If you rely upon Egypt, you're just going to be shamed and humiliated, because the Lord will just, or the Assyrians will just take over Egypt as well. So here the encouragement is, don't rely upon Egypt. They will be overcome. Don't fear Assyria if the Lord is with you, because he will overcome them as well. And we'll actually read about the Assyrians being defeated at the end of this chapter. But let's go ahead and read here in Isaiah chapter 30, beginning in verse number 1. Woe to the rebellious children. This is the Lord's declaration. They carry out a plan, but not mine. They make an alliance, but against my will, piling sin on top of sin. Without asking my advice, they set out to go down to Egypt in order to seek shelter under Pharaoh's protection and take refuge in Pharaoh's shadow. But Pharaoh's protection will become your shame, and refuge in Egypt's shadow your humiliation. For though his princes are at Zoan and his messengers reach as far as Hanez, everyone will be ashamed because of a people who can't help. They are of no benefit. They are no help. They are good for nothing but shame and disgrace. A pronouncement concerning the animals of the Negev. Through a land of trouble and distress, of lioness and lion, of viper and flying serpent, they carry their wealth on the back of donkeys and their treasure on the humps of camels, to a people who will not help them. Egypt's help is completely worthless. Therefore, I call her Rahab, who just sits. Go now, write it on a tablet in their presence, and inscribe it on a scroll. It will be for the future forever and ever. They are a rebellious people, deceptive children who do not want to listen to the Lord's instruction. They say to the seers, do not see, and to the prophets, do not prophesy the truth to us. Tell us flattering things and prophesy illusions. Get out of the way. Leave the pathway. Rid us of the Holy One of Israel. Therefore, the Holy One of Israel says, because you have rejected this message and have trusted in oppression and deceit, and have depended on them, this iniquity of yours will be like a crumbling gap, a bulge in the wall, whose collapse will come in an instant, suddenly. Its collapse will be like the shattering of a potter's jar, crushed to pieces, so that not even a fragment of pottery will be found among its shattered remains. No fragment large enough to take fire from a hearth or scoop water from a cistern. For the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, has said, you will be delivered by returning and resting. Your strength will lie in quiet confidence, but you are not willing. You say, no, we will escape on horses. Therefore, you will escape, and we will ride on fast horses, but those who pursue you will be faster. 1,000 will flee at the threat of one. At the threat of 5, you will flee until you remain like a solitary pole on a mountaintop or a banner on a hill. Therefore, the Lord is waiting to show you mercy and is rising up to show you compassion for the Lord is a just God. All who wait patiently for him are happy. For people will live on Zion in Jerusalem. You will never weep again. He will show favor to you at the sound of your outcry. As soon as he hears, he will answer you. The Lord will give you meager bread and water during oppression, but your teacher will not hide any longer. Your eyes will see your teacher, and whenever you turn to the right or the left, your ears will hear his command behind you. This is the way. Walk in it. Then you will defile your silver-plated idols and your gold-plated images. You will throw them away like minstrel cloths and call them filth. Then he will send rain for your seed that you have sown in the ground, and the food, the produce of the ground, will be rich and plentiful. On that day, your cattle will graze in open pastures. The oxen and donkeys that work the ground will eat salted fodder scattered with winnowing shovel and fork. Streams flowing with water will be on every high mountain and every raised hill on the day of great slaughter when the towers fell. The moonlight will be as bright as the sunlight, and the sunlight will be 7 times brighter, like the light of 7 days, on the day the Lord bandages his people's injuries, and heals the wounds he afflicted. Look, the name of the Lord is coming from far away. His anger is burning and heavy with smoke. His lips are full of fury, and his tongue is like a consuming fire. His breath is like an overflowing torrent that rises to the neck. He comes to sift the nations as a sieve of destruction, and to put a bridle on the jaws of the peoples, to lead them astray. Your singing will be like that of the night of a holy festival, and your heart will rejoice like the one who walks to the music of a flute, going up to the mountain of the Lord, to the rock of Israel. The Lord will make the splendor of his voice heard, and reveal his arm, striking in angry wrath, and a flaming of consuming fire, in driving rain, a torrent, and hailstones. Assyria will be shattered by the voice of the Lord. He will strike like a rod. And every stroke of the appointed staff that the Lord brings down on him will be the sound of tambourines and lyres. He will fight against him with brandished weapons. Indeed, Topeth has been ready for the king for a long time. Its funeral pyre is deep and wide, with plenty of fire and wood. The breath of the Lord, like a torrent of burning sulfur, kindles it. Again, the speaking of the prophet here within this text is against the people of Egypt and against the people of Assyria. But what's going on here is the Lord warning his people, do not put your faith in this nation that you just were recently delivered from. This is probably about 700-ish years since the Exodus, since the people begged to be delivered from the hands of the Egyptians. And now for some ridiculous reason, they're seeking to go back to Egypt and to find confidence in Egypt. Lord says, don't do this. Don't do that. There is no confidence that can be rooted in Egypt. There is nothing they can do for you, because they are going to be overrun. They are powerless. They are nothing before you. Don't desire for the seers and the prophets to just tickle your ears, because if that's the case, well, destruction will come to you in the same way. I just want to note shame and disgrace, humiliation and shame. That's what waits for those who rely upon Egypt. But the Lord, verse 18, the Lord is waiting to show mercy and is rising up to show compassion. The overwhelming, never-ending compassion of God is clearly at play here. He wants to deliver his people. And if they do that, and there is a sense in which they are going to do that, he says, that when you do this, when you do rely upon me, once again, you will get rid of your idols. You'll get rid of everything that is opposed to me. And whenever you do that, I will bless you. And not only will I bless you for your faithfulness, but I'm going to bless you in such a way by turning Assyria away and not allowing Assyria to overcome you as they have the northern kingdom of Israel. So the message here is pretty plain. If you want to survive, if you want to be blessed, if you want to be able to stand against this oncoming onslaught, then trust in me. And if you do that, then you'll get to rejoice at the Lord at work. You'll get to rejoice as he turns away Assyria and punishes them for their own sin and their own rebellion. And that to me is the message of Isaiah 30. Don't trust in men. We've heard that already, haven't we? That has been a common theme in Isaiah's writings. Don't trust in men, trust in me. Turn from your evil ways, turn from your paganism, turn from your idolatry, turn from your rebellion, and acknowledge me as your God. Submit to me, and I will deliver you. That is Isaiah chapter 30. All right, let's shift our attention now to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12 is where we'll finish up our reading today. Luke chapter 12, if you remember from yesterday, we were talking about the hypocrisy of the Jewish leadership. And now here Jesus is going to really key in on that and encourage those who are following him to themselves guard against the hypocrisy and the wicked influence of the Pharisees, and to shift their attention to focusing on God. First and foremost, to focus on him, because he will provide for them. That the riches of this world are not going to provide for them. All riches do are create anxieties, and they could be delivered from that. They need to be ready to stand before the Lord. They need to be ready to show their faithfulness to him and him alone. So let's notice this here in Luke chapter 12, beginning in verse number 1. Meanwhile, a crowd of many thousands came together so that they were trampling on one another. He began to say to his disciples, first, be on your guard against the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. There is nothing covered that won't be uncovered, nothing hidden that won't be known. Therefore, whatever you have said in the dark will be heard in the light. And whatever you have whispered in an ear in private rooms will be proclaimed on the housetops. I say to you, my friends, don't fear those who kill the body, and after that can do nothing more. But I will show you the one to fear. Fear him who has authority to throw people into hell after death. Yes, I say to you, this is the one to fear. Aren't 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies, and yet not one of them is forgotten in God's sight? Indeed, the hairs on your head are all counted. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. And I say to you, anyone who acknowledges me before others, the Son of Man will also acknowledge before the angels of God. But whoever denies me before others will be denied before the angels of God. Anyone who speaks a word against the Son of Man will be forgiven, but the one who blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven. Whenever they bring you before synagogues and rulers and authorities, don't worry about how you should defend yourselves or what you should say, for the Holy Spirit will teach you at that very hour what must be said. Someone from the crowd said to him, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Friend, he said to him, who appointed me a judge or arbitrator over you? He then told him, watch out and be on guard against all greed, because one's life is not in the abundance of his possessions. Then he told them in a parable, a rich man's land was very productive. He thought to himself, what should I do since I don't have anywhere to store my crops? I will do this, he said. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones and store all my grain and my goods there. Then I'll say to myself, you have many goods stored up for many years. Take it easy, eat, drink, and enjoy yourself. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? That's how it is with the one who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. And then he said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, don't worry about your life, what you will eat, or about the body, what you will wear, for life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They don't sow or reap. They don't have a storeroom or a barn, yet God feeds them. Aren't you worth more than the birds? Can any of you add one moment of his lifespan by worrying? If then you're not able to do a little thing, why worry about the rest? Consider how the wild flowers grow. They don't labor or spin thread. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his splendor was adorned like one of these. Not even Solomon in all of his splendor was adorned like one of these. If that's how God clothes the grass, which is in the field today and is thrown into the furnace tomorrow, how much more will he do for you, you of little faith? Don't strive for what you should eat or what you should drink, and don't be anxious, for the Gentile world eagerly seeks all these things, and the Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be provided for you. Don't be afraid, little flock, because your Father delights to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Make money bags for yourselves that don't grow old, and exhaustive treasure in heaven, where no grief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Be ready for service and have your lamps lit. You are to be like people waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can open the door for him at once. Blessed will be those servants the master finds alert when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will get ready, have them recline at the table, then come and serve them. If he comes in the middle of the night and even near dawn and finds them alert, blessed are those servants. But know this: if the homeowner had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also be ready, because the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Lord, Peter asked, are you telling this parable to us or to everyone? The Lord said, who then is the faithful and sensible manager his master will put in charge of his household to give them their allotted food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom the master finds doing his job when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But if that servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, and starts to beat the male and female servants and to eat and drink and get drunk, the servant's master will come on a day he did not expect him, and in an hour he does not know. He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the unfaithful. And that servant who knew his master's will and didn't prepare himself to do it will be severely beaten. But the one who did not know and did what deserved punishment will receive a light beating. From everyone who has been given much, much will be required. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, even more will be expected. I came to bring fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already set ablaze. But I have a baptism to undergo, and how it consumes me until it is finished. Do you think that I came here to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. And from now on, 5 in one household will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. He also said to the crowd, when you see a cloud rising in the west, right away you say, a storm is coming. And so it does. And when the south wind is blowing, you say, it's going to be hot. And it is. Hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and the sky, but you don't know how to interpret this present time. Why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? As you are going with your adversary to the ruler, make an effort to settle with him on the way. Then he won't drag you before the judge, and the judge hand you over to the bailiff, and the bailiff throw you into prison. I tell you, you will never get out of there until you have paid the last penny. As I think about Luke chapter 12, I think about the middle section where Jesus talks about being ready for judgment, being ready for that time whenever the Son of Man is coming and he's going to execute his judgment against people. And just think about that in the context of everything that's found within this chapter. Don't be a hypocrite. You'll be judged for that. Acknowledge Christ, or else you will be judged for that. Don't blaspheme against the Spirit, or you'll be judged for that. Don't focus on riches, or you'll be judged for that. Don't be overly anxious. You'll be judged for that. Know that there is going to be a judgment that is coming. And here's the thing that Jesus says at the end that is very striking to me. He says, listen, y'all are basically little, amateur meteorologists. Even back in his day, you see this coming and that's coming. You see that coming, this is coming. And yet you're looking around at what I'm doing and you're not allowing that to lead you to the proper conclusion. You're not going to be ready for my return. You're not going to be ready for that time of judgment because you're not properly understanding what is going on. And that's going to leave you in a very difficult place whenever I return and settle my accounts. So the question for us then, as we're thinking about Luke chapter 12, is to ask the question of ourselves, are we ready for that time whenever Jesus returns to settle accounts? Are we avoiding the things within this chapter that he says we need to avoid? Or are we being lazy and not thinking about the fact that someday whether it comes before our death or if our death brings it on, we will be judged for the life that we live here. Will we be ready? Will our account be settled well? Or will we see ourselves as being very lacking because of the lives that we have lived? I hope that for each and every one of us, we've made the commitment to live a life that will allow ourselves to be able to stand in God's grace and stand before Him as faithful and as trusting, as people who live for Him. That's my hope for myself, and I hope that is my hope for you, and I hope that's your hope for yourself as well, as a person who is committed to the Lord, following Jesus everywhere He might lead us. Thanks for joining in for our daily Bible readings today in Isaiah 30 and Luke chapter 12. I hope it gets you started off on a good way today on this Lord's Day. And if you have any questions or comments, always leave that in the comment section wherever you might be watching. Or if you're listening on the website, please feel free to shoot us a message if you have any questions or comments there as well. Looking forward to being with the Loudon Church family here in just a little bit as we get into our Bible classes and also worship together following. I'll be thinking some along the lines of what we've been reading in the Old Testament, be focusing on the question of why is God focused on the nations in the prophets? We know why He's focused on His people. They're His people. What about the nations? Why is He giving attention to them? We're going to talk about that some this morning in our assembly lesson. Looking forward to getting into that with you as well. Again, thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day. We'll get back at it tomorrow on Monday, the 31st, last day of January already. It's crazy, but we'll be in Isaiah 31 and also Luke chapter 13. Hope you could tune in for that. Have a great rest of this Lord's Day, and God bless.